So I can tell you from experience, this is exactly how I got over my back issues. 6 years out from my last injury, I'm stronger than I've ever been. And there were times where I had to sleep on the floor to feel right. There were times where I thought my lifting career was just about over. I got tired of groaning in pain every morning, every time I had to put on my socks. There's no reason to live like that. So take care of your back hygiene, pay attention to your bracing ability, and at the end of the day, you're gonna be a better lifter for it. People don't talk about bracing enough. Bracing is extremely important to being an effective lifter and preventing injury. Most people apply the wrong tools to their abdominals, or they're just satisfied with these passive strength gains they get from pushing their squat and deadlift further along. And for a lot of people, that works just fine. Squatting and deadlifting is a good way to strengthen your midsection. So for those people who can improve those lifts and the midsection never becomes a weak point, more power to you. But there's also a big chunk of people where the midsection will fall behind and not be able to match the horsepower put out by the knees and hips. That's when you run into trouble. Now, I specifically fell into that category. I had 10 years where I had injury after injury after injury, and it was entirely because I had no idea of how to build tension in my midsection. I didn't know how to brace, I didn't know how to position. It was weak, it was spongy, and that was the weak link that gave when the weight got too high. Now, this isn't to say that everybody that pulls with a rounded back is doomed to injury. Really, this is more about building tension and stability regardless of how you pull. Not just as a means of putting off injury, but as a means of actively improving your performance and getting more out of your training. I'm going to link Stu McGill's books below. Back Mechanic and Gift of Injury are both absolutely great resources, and they go a lot more into depth about these principles, and they give you a lot more tools to work with to start progressing your bracing ability so that you can stay injury free and get a lot more out of your performance. So go ahead and check those out below. So the important thing to know about bracing right off the bat is that it's not just abdominal strength, which is why we don't look to any ab exercise like sit-ups or crunches or leg raises to be the way that we improve our bracing ability. We need the context of positioning. Posture is extremely important because depending on exactly where your ribs or where your pelvis is pointing, that's going to have big implications for how stable you potentially can be. So I want you to think of the spine the way you would think of a cable tower. We use this guy wire analogy because all the other limbs are rigid. Your humerus, your femur requires no effort to build stiffness in there because they're rigid bones. But your vertebra is basically a bunch of Lincoln logs stacked on top of each other. And it's made that way for a reason, so that we can move and bend and flex, get in different positions, and we can do a whole variety of activities because of that. But we also occasionally need our spine to be another rigid lever arm. And the only way we do that is by contracting the muscles all around the torso, which creates a ton of pressure. Same reason you take a big deep breath and push out against the belt, it creates pressure that creates stability. So you can support a lot of weight. You can transfer a lot of force very efficiently. So that's how you want to do most athletic activities, most explosive activities, especially if you're trying to move a very heavy load. Now, the way that we do that, the way that we maintain rigidness with this structure that looks very unstable, all these little bones stacked on top of each other, is by applying equal and opposite tension the way guy wires do to a cable tower. So the obliques on either side of the spine, they pull in opposite directions, and that creates stability in the center. Similarly, the abdominals in the front, then you have the muscles in the back, like the erectors, the QL, front to back, equal and opposite tension, you get stability in the middle. Like any lifter who needs recovery, like they need oxygen, sleep is really important to me. So I was super excited to partner with Bear Mattress for this. As a stomach sleeper, sleeping on low quality mattresses would cause my back to droop, and I would routinely wake up with low back pain. But ever since Bear Mattress paired me with their firm, king-sized hybrid elite mattress, I've been able to wake up feeling amazing. Not only am I well rested from sleeping through the night, but I can even go into my morning workouts without feeling achy or brittle. Now, Bear Mattress also has a sleep quiz that takes all of the guesswork out of finding out which mattress is appropriate for you. Don't wait till you get the mattress to figure out if it suits your sleeping position or your preferences. Take the quiz and they will match you with the perfect mattress. Bear's mattresses are also made with 3 premium foams designed to remove and push away unwanted body heat. I absolutely cook in the middle of the night and I hate being warm when I'm trying to sleep. So anything that wicks away heat and keeps me cool is absolutely a plus. The best part about all of this is that Bear delivers your mattress right to your door with free shipping in the United States. The mattress comes rolled up in a box and is super easy to set up. I was actually able to pop this sucker up on my shoulder and get it upstairs in one go. If it makes you nervous to buy something you haven't tried, Bear has a 120-night sleep trial. So you get more than 3 months to make sure that you absolutely love it. If you don't, they pick it up for you and you get a full refund. Plus, Bear mattresses have a lifetime warranty and they even offer financing options and flexible payment plans. Thank you so much, Bear Mattress, for supporting this video. Be sure to go to bearmattress.com/Alexander Bromley to save 30%. That's almost a third off your mattress using code Alexander Bromley. So this shows why it's important to be balanced around your midsection. It's not enough just to have a strong back. Your abdominals, your obliques, they all have to be strong and working together. So now that we know that, we can look at posture. This is the gold standard. I want you to think of perfect posture as somebody standing at attention. The ribs are down so that the abs can be tensed, almost like you're in a borderline crunch position. And the glutes are tense just enough to set the hips right at neutral. There should be a natural curve in the low back, a natural curve in the upper back. And if you imagine the bottom of the ribs with the top of the pelvis, that should be the ends of a can. And the analogy is don't dent the can. The second you either round or arch, those planes will either point away or point towards each other. And this represents a dented can. Now with this overly arched position, that's an anterior pelvic tilt. The butt sticking out, that stretches the glutes and the hamstrings, and it stretches the abs, and the back contracts. So when you arch really hard, you might get a back pump from the erectors being contracted really hard, but also the abdominals are stretched out. This is a real weak position. Just lean back and feel that abdominal stretch and ask yourself, how strong can those muscles be in that stretched out position? And for anybody that's ever squatted with a really big arch, you know that that tension kicks into your hamstrings really quick because they're pulled extra long. And likewise, your hamstrings aren't going to be at their strongest if they start out lengthened. So to fix this, to get these planes to level out, you bring your ribs down, you tuck your hips under. So now the abdominals are shortened, stronger position. That's how you want to take a punch. Glutes and hamstrings start a little bit shorter, which not only means that they're stronger, but that shortened position actually helps eliminate the butt wink at the bottom because you don't run into that tension halfway down. So if you suffer from an anterior pelvic tilt, that's a very productive fix. Just think about bringing the ribs down, squeezing your glutes, tucking your pelvis. Now this position, I want you to think about this like a plank. It's basically a standing plank. Starting a squat, locking out a deadlift, the top of a kettlebell swing, they should all look and feel like a plank. That means glutes and abdominals tight, spine completely neutral. That is the strongest, most stable position you can be in. And that's gonna represent most of the training we do that actually helps us brace. Now, the opposite of this is going to be this rounded position, which some of you deadlifters might be able to relate to. This is a posterior pelvic tilt, and some of you might unfortunately walk around like this, although it's not quite as common as the other one. But you see this pelvic tilt, it points up to the front, so it's an anterior tilt, and the upper back round. So now it's the erectors and the muscles of the upper back that are stretched out. And that's where you're really disadvantaged. Those muscles have to get really strong. So if you want to train your erectors, you do that. You stretch them out, you round your back, you do round back in mornings, sandbag and Atlas stone picks, puts you in that position. It grows them because it disadvantages them, which isn't great if you're trying to squat or deadlift as much weight as you possibly can. Now, to the drama surrounding the controversy of pulling with a rounded back or not, you get good at how you train as a general rule. But if we're looking at lifters on an individual basis, different people can get away with different things. So just because there are some people who've been able to be successful pulling with a really rounded back or with one particular style, they're likely to have different leverages in you, different tendon insertions, different genetic predisposition to recovering from training, different joint thickness. There's all kinds of things that affect durability. So there's a spread. That's why we don't have one rule. There isn't one size fits all with what you should do. There's a little bit of trial and error. When in doubt, I think it's always best to go with the standardized approach that's deliberate. We do that in literally every other sport, so we know that this is more stable. When in doubt, that's what you should strive for. But you absolutely can adapt around these different positions. It's just a matter of, are you going to develop overuse issues as a result? And what do you do if and when that happens? And are you going to be limited in your performance by being in a position that isn't technically as stable or durable or consistent as this other standard over here? That's what you have to ask yourself. So for those people that do fall into one of these categories, if you're stuck in your training or you're developing overuse issues, chronic back problems, this is the first thing you want to look at. Is it guaranteed to be the thing that's causing you issues? No, not necessarily, but it's a good place to start. And worst case scenario, you're going to get a stronger midsection as a result. So I really don't see the downside. Now, the other thing, aside from just lifting performance, is transfer to other activities. This is so great because this position is actually how you hinge. If you're rounding or arching, you're not hinging. You're going to end up with this weird mishmash of like spinal flexion with hip extension. And that's not a hinge, and that's not how you do most athletic activities. So by building rigidness in your torso and learning how to move your limbs independently, that's how you get true athletic transfer. And that's how you can strengthen your midsection in a way that will carry over to anything else you do other than lifting. So first things first, we have to find what neutral is. So you want to get a sense of where your ribs are pointing. Practice tensing your abs like you're doing a crunch. And practice pointing your ribs up and away to stretch out your abdominals, and play around with that and find the middle ground. You want to find a position where you're standing at attention, but the ribs are down, the abdominals are tense, your glutes and hamstrings are tensed, but your spine is neutral. And again, it should feel like you're braced in a plank position. That's the stable position you want to find. Once you do that, we need to drill that pattern. And to start out, we need to drill it without load. Because if you're worried about load, your attention isn't going to be on the finer points of where your positioning is. So we start getting that pattern down without load. Once coordination increases, then we work on endurance and we start to increase the stress by holding it longer. And you're going to be surprised how difficult this is at first. Then we move to load or making changes that make the movement a little more difficult. And then finally, we take this that we've drilled into our brains and we apply it to every other activity we do. And then step 6, of course, is profit. So this is a short list of my favorite bracing activities. Most of you, whether you're just starting to lift or whether you deadlift 900 pounds, if you're new to bracing, you're all starting in novice position because your coordination is messed up and you're not going to do anything worthwhile until you fix it. The best thing to start with is 90-90 breathing. This is where you're laying on the ground, feet up on a wall, hips and knees at 90 degrees. The benefit of this is that you're not under a load and you don't even have to worry about posture. It's taken care of. Laying flat on the ground, you're going to have perfect posture, so you can focus purely on what your abdominals are doing. So you're starting out with that brace where the ends of the cans are directly on top of each other. And all you have to do is worry about your breathing. What are your abdominals doing? How are you squeezing? How are you contracting? I have a video on 90-90 breathing. It's going to be below. I recommend you start with that and you do it every single day. Do it before your workouts. Do it when you first wake up. You can do it multiple times a day. Don't skimp on it. It's really challenging. You're going to be surprised at how this humbles you. But once you get a feel for how the abdominals actually work and that coordination starts to click, then you can advance forward. And that's where we have things like planks and then eventually side planks, where again, we're trying to mimic this position right here under a load. Planks are a little more difficult to maintain, so the muscles have to work a little bit harder. All of these movements are isometric, okay? These muscles, we're trying to get them to tense and stay tense. So right out of the gate, we work on endurance first. You first have to make sure you can hold a plank without feeling any tension in your back, because if you feel tension in your back, that means that your can is dented. So you go back to square one. We don't have any room for dented cans. If you can't maintain a position with good posture, you go back to square one. So we go longer with the 90-90 breathing. We do more breaths. We go longer with the planks, longer with the side planks. 30 to 40 seconds is usually a good place to start with planks. Most people, 10 to 20 seconds is pretty good for the side planks. And then you just take that out, go a little longer, a couple of seconds longer each time, up the frequency, up the number of sets you do. You can get a lot out of these before you have to get to the really elaborate, challenging variations that tax you. And then I call this group Isometric Plus. At first I was going to call them Chaos Isometrics, but that sounded too much like Joel Seedman nonsense, so I changed that. Isometric Plus. The muscles that keep you in position are still working isometrically. This is a principle I first stumbled across in Stu McGill's work, and I strongly recommend you guys, if you're dealing with issues, you want to get more insight into this stuff, check out Back Mechanic, check out The Gift of Injury with Brian Carroll. I interviewed Brian Carroll and had a really good lengthy conversation about the works that they do here and how I related to a lot of the stuff that they do and how I used it to get better. But I strongly recommend you check that stuff out. Link will be in the description. But Stu McGill's idea is basically that the musculature around the spine exists to limit movement, where we train our shoulders and our triceps and our hamstrings and our glutes to move us through space. These muscles are trained to limit motion because we want to maintain a certain position under an external load. So the rest of the world's trying to move us around, we're trying to resist it. The better we can do that, the better shape our spine and midsection is going to be in, the more effective we're going to be in just about everything we do. So these are isometric plus because we're still maintaining that brace in the same way, but now things are getting crazy. So our limbs are moving, and you'll notice that your body likes to kind of mesh movement patterns together. So you'll be braced, but then you'll realize you got to move your arm and you want to get pulled out of that brace. You got to move your leg. You got to take a breath. Any small little deviation causes a change that breaks this chain. So you need to train yourself to get into these different positions while being braced. And this is how you'll be able to do things like run and jump and throw a punch. This is how you'll be able to get in other positions like the bottom of a squat or the bottom of a deadlift while still maintaining that brace that puts you in the strongest possible position. So dead bugs and bird dogs are two of my favorites. I like dead bugs to start out with for the same reason I like 90-90 breathing. And that's because you're laying down, so posture's taken care of. So you can really focus on maintaining tension in your abdominals while moving your limbs independently. And I'm gonna have links to videos that go into depth on all of these. Taken up a notch is a bird dog. So that's where you just flip over. Now you're on all fours and you're similarly moving the opposite arm and leg, which is a little challenging by itself. These are both really good movements for starting to get a feel for how your limbs should move independently of the position your torso's in. Ab rollouts are an advanced variation of a plank. You're in a plank position, but now you're holding onto this wheel. As the wheel gets out in front of you, now that's a longer lever, which means the abs have to work harder to maintain position. So of course you start on your knees and then eventually progress to your toes, but don't get caught up on just getting reps to get reps. You only want to do these if you've mastered the plank. If you're doing rollouts and you feel it in your lower back, remember, back to square one. Stop that, go do some more 90-90 breathing. Then stir the pots. I'm a big fan of these. You don't see these very often. Stir the pot, similarly, plank position on a stability ball. And what you're gonna do is just make little concentric circles. You can do so many counterclockwise and then move to clockwise. And you're gonna find that that creates a ton of instability that wants to chuck you off to the side. And it's only by really focusing on that brace that you can stay tight and execute those circles without going anywhere, without face planting on the ground. So stir the pots are really good as well. And again, these are all extensions of these, so make sure that you have the basics down first. Once you start to progress on these and you're in a good position, if you know that you're in that neutral plank position, every time you squat, every time you deadlift, every time, even when you get into an awkward position where you do have to be rounded a little bit, you're gonna feel so much receptivity in your abdominals, it's gonna be insane. So I can tell you from experience, this is exactly how I got over my back issues. 6 years out from my last injury, I'm stronger than I've ever been. And there were times where I had to sleep on the floor to feel right. There were times where I thought my lifting career was just about over because I got tired of groaning in pain every morning, every time I had to put on my socks. There's no reason to live like that. So take care of your back hygiene, pay attention to your bracing ability, and at the end of the day, you're gonna be a better lifter for it. Hey guys, do me a favor. If you found any of this interesting, entertaining, or educational, please consider subscribing. I appreciate everybody's support. It has been absolutely integral to my ability to do this full time, so thank you. Thanks for watching, guys. Till next time, this is Bromley. I'll see ya.